Hey,
So,
Diane.
I think it's only the three of us because of that little snafu.
I messed it up. Totally messed it up. Oh, Diane. Um, I, what? I can't hear you, Diane. You're muted.
Yeah.
How are you this morning?
A little bit traumatized by my ineptness with technology.
Well, but the weather looks beautiful
Yeah.
down there. I love that you just don't you feel like you just want to jump in the ocean behind you?
Oh my
Hmm.
gosh. I actually grew up as a surfer and a lifesaver on the beach. And this is like my dream picture, you know. I just love the ocean. So I love just being out there in the swells and just, catching glassy waves. It's like my ultimate state of sort of meditation and being one
It
with
looks
Mother
so,
Nature.
yeah,
Yeah.
Cool.
nice. It looks so close. Is it really that close to you? Is it really that close? Like you just look outside the window and it's there?
No,
Oh,
that's a
it's not.
background. That's a background, John.
I know, but I mean, I was just
Oh,
wondering if it
I
represents where
wish I
you
was. I wish I was down
are.
right now. I was down there yesterday, so it was like that.
How far is it? Is it like a drive?
Um, Yeah, it's about 30 Ks, I think. Or maybe
30,
not that far, 20 Ks.
30 kilometers?
Yeah.
I guess that's what, like 18 what is that, like 18 miles?
Yeah, it's 8 is to 5 is the conversion. So
That'd be
anyway,
like 18.
yeah. So the fact that there's only three of us makes it a lot easier and everything. I feel so bad that I got a whole lot of people who are so excited to join.
Oh no.
Oh my gosh. And then I just blew them off. So I'm going to just have to
Oh,
apologize.
your last message went through. Your
Oh,
last message went through.
yeah. Do you know what I did? Just to add to,
What?
first of all, making two Zoom meetings at the same time. So that was the first mistake. Then getting close to the time and there was no one on. And I thought, listen, there must be something wrong with my computer. So I reset my whole computer. But then Windows decided it was going to do its little thing. And
Okay.
then I realized that, uh, Diane, you said that I was connected to another meeting, and then I realized I had connected on my cell phone. So I
Ah.
literally wanted to cancel out of my cell phone, so I switched my cell phone off. So now I didn't have the WhatsApp connection, and yeah, I am sending these, please join, yeah, and everything to everyone, and nothing's
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
Nobody's getting the messages because my cell phone was switched off. So then
That's
while we
okay.
were talking, I reset my cell phone, and now the messages have gone through,
Well,
you know.
you see what that the lesson is there is don't panic. The first thing you need to do is not panic and go on the WhatsApp and say, stay tuned, having some technical issues. But then by the time you finished all that stuff, it was 7:13 by the time you finally sent your message on WhatsApp. Who
So
knows where
yeah,
people are
yeah,
now? Probably
it is
having their
what it
lunch or
is.
something.
It
Yeah.
Well,
is what it is.
having this, I know it's 1 o'clock your time,
Yeah.
but like I'm like in the St. Louis area, so it's like
Oh,
o'clock my time.
six
When I
something. Yeah.
Yes, and when I go to Colorado, it's 5 o'clock my time.
We can
So
Wow.
we can adjust that time forward,
Yeah, maybe you can.
like to
maybe to
make it
like three
suitable.
o'clock or
Yeah,
it's just
yeah.
something where it's just a little bit more. I can't figure out why I can't get myself in the middle. Okay, that's okay.
Just turn your camera a little bit like this, like push it back and forth.
Maybe like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I just woke up, so
Okay.
blah.
Oh, well, you look great for just waking up.
Me too.
Always
Yeah.
look gorgeous. So okay, gorgeous, good stuff. So hello
Okay.
and sorry, John, carry on.
No, no, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Yes. I thought you were okay. I thought you were going to introduce us. Sorry.
Oh, you may as well introduce yourselves just to start off with. Go ahead, John.
I'm sorry. I thought you were heading there, but I probably stopped you from saying something. But
It's all good.
um,
It's all good. Go ahead, John.
okay.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah. I'm John. I think I know you both quite well, and I'm kind of just checking out again your meeting and looking forward to hearing what people have to say. Maybe since it's only the three of us, we could talk about the last meeting. That's what I was thinking.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. I brought in a lot of your points and a lot of like Diana's points and everything and what I spoke about, and then I try to bring it in with what's happening in our world and what is truth and what is lies. So I have got a sort of like pretty comprehensive sort of thing. So and then we can all like do our own thing after that, you know. I mean, so we're all going
Mhm.
to have at least, I don't know, a decent period of time to speak. So yeah, cool. Thanks, John. Diane, anything?
Hi, I'm Diane. Yeah, I think it sounds great. I was actually kind of happy that it happened because it reminds me of the separation that people have in their hearts. And it reminds me of why I'm an Earthian because I know both sides. I've been on both sides, and it didn't work. And that's why I decided to do something else. So anytime people get into politics, I'm always like, well, I'm an Earthian. I'm not on this side or that side. I just want to protect the Earth, however that happens.
Mm.
Yeah, I'm pretty much that. I mean, I just basically, my thing even goes like more crazy than that. I'm like, I'm of Mother Nature within Mother Nature. I'm of the universe within the universe. We're all connected. We're all part of this one enormous process that's happening. We're just like, and everything we say and do is like an expression of this world within it, and we affect our whole world by just being who we are and doing what we do. So if we want to save our world, it's really we need to change what we do, you know, what we think, what we say, what we feel, what we do. All of those things are so important. My grandson, just an example, used to whine and cry, and he was just like this total nightmare. And I said to him, you know, you just got to change the way you behave, and people will behave differently to you. And it took me
Sure.
many, many years of going through it with him. But he's starting to get it now. And he's like, Granddad, today I'm going to be positive and I'm going to be nice and kind. And we have this magical day. And he's like, whoa, what the hell, you know? Tomorrow I'm going to
Mm.
do the same. And it's really about the energy that we put out there comes back to us like multiplied. So what do you want out there? What do you want the world to be? Just be that, you know? That's Gandhi, of course. Be the change you want to see in the world.
There you go. I like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. Anyway, so my name's Dennis, if you missed that in the beginning. All right.
Think we
So
all know.
so let's just go through this. Yeah, just so you all know. Yeah, let's just go through this like structure because you know if I did have more people, I would need to learn all this stuff and practice it myself. So, hello everyone. Welcome to our Help Save Our World Speak, the second meeting. I'm super excited today. This is the people's voices in search of truth and transformation. The interesting thing is what I've been doing this last week is I've been recording video of my book, and I'm super excited that like maybe early this week or sometime this week I'll have sections organized so that I can send you audiobook recordings. So I'm going to do audiobooks of everything, but I'm just going to send you bits and pieces so that you can get to understand and know what I'm doing and why I'm doing it and how I'm doing it. I'm Dennis, the teacher, the creator of the Help Save Our World organization and People's Movement for Fundamental Change in Our World. And now our Help Save Our World Speakers Forum to bring the people's voices and the voices of the voiceless ones, like the trees and the animals and the insects that have no voice, to the people of the world. If we change our conversations, we change our world. I will be your host for this evening. Let's just do
Point.
some housekeeping. Sorry, did I say an and? Okay. Housekeeping. This meeting is planned for an hour and a half. And of course, you can stay longer if you want to chat about anything, that's fine. So we're going to begin with introductions, which we just did. Next, we'll deal with rules. To begin, I will set the example by giving you an introductory speech based on last week's ideas and the topics that we brought up, which is truth and lies, and problems we face in our world. I will also look for these ideas in relation to interesting points that were brought up last week. So that just like adds another bent to it. Next, I'll invite speakers for up to 5 to whatever minutes. It's going to be like half an hour each almost. And we will then basically we'll talk about the topics, either the topics that we presented, which is truth and lies and problems of the world and solutions, or just something you want to talk about, depending on, okay, so depending on how many speeches, we've got plenty of time. Okay, so the exciting news is that recordings things that I'm going to be giving away for free. So if you haven't given me your email address and telephone numbers and everything, please do so you don't miss out. Finally, we will discuss who does prepared speeches next week and what the topics will be spoken about. And of course, during this whole process, is what I'm trying to do is present speeches to guide the process, because I've been on this journey many times. And what happens is, it happened to many of my friends. They would start on this spiritual journey and they would get lost somewhere along the way, and they would just end up stuck in religions or into politics or becoming a whatever. And they got lost and were not able to get out of that fixed circulating mindset that just keeps them stuck there forever. So they didn't succeed in breaking out of the box or breaking out of the pyramid scheme and becoming this observer with perspective and knowledge and wisdom. They just ended up dumbasses as usual, you know. So unfortunately, it's critically important that I just, with my experience, like guide the conversation. And if you're willing to go with me and you trust my process, I'll take you on this incredible journey. It's absolutely a magical journey. It's something that, you know, very few people are, everyone on earth really needs, but very few people are going to be lucky to experience in their lifetimes. In my speech, let me take you on another thought journey. Dealing with the issues and ideas brought up from last week, why help save our world? I mean, if all humans disappeared and the world just carried on turning, it would be just fine. Hey, John. So our world is much more than an objectified third rock from the sun, like, and it's dead and it's not doing, you know, it's just this thing. In actual fact, our world, if you really, really go on this incredible journey, you'll discover that our world is literally a living organism. It is like, you can have a look at continental drift and all of these different things, and the thickness of the continental plates between the continents, how they're very thin in the middle and how they've grown apart. And literally, our planet is growing. It's this living organism. And every day as the sun shines, it heats up and it cools down. And the oxygen put into the atmosphere is literally like a breathing system. And the water running down the continents, like the veins of the continents, feeding all sorts of life downstream. And life expands and dies back. And it's like this incredible living organism. And we are intimately part of that whole process. So everything we do is affecting that whole living organism, that living system. And if it's pollution, we're like, for example, carbon dioxide, and we're acidifying the oceans, which is killing the plankton, which is the plankton is produces the oxygen, most of the oxygen on our planet. It's called phytoplankton, meaning photosynthesis plankton, you know, that's plant life plankton. Of course, there's zooplankton, which is all of the animal life and crustaceans and fish eggs and all that sort of thing. But zooplankton or zooplankton is that photosynthesis process, which is much bigger than just the trees and the plant life on the continents. And all of that is producing oxygen, and that oxygen is maintaining our atmosphere. And there's so many different levels of the atmosphere, and the ozone, which acts like a blanket, and it's like, and the electromagnetosphere. It's all of these different levels that are like happening and maintaining and sustaining the balances of this like incredible balancing planetary system. And everything in the universe works on a similar principle. Everything's balancing. I mean, just think about yourself. you drink a certain amount of water, you drink too much, you'll actually die. And if you drink too little, you die. And if you don't eat enough or you eat too much, you die. We are constantly balancing. Our head being just held up straight here. I'm balancing my head. I'm balancing on my chair. Everything, like there are these fundamental wisdoms of nature and life, which is we are Mother Nature. We are this like expressions of Mother Nature within it. We are the water we drink. We are the food we eat. We are this like these beings that are of this reality and expressions like the idea of going to another planet and going living on Mars. It's like it's freezing. It's like it's insane. There's no food. There's no water. All of the stuff. The gravity is different. Everything's different. We are as we are because of being part of this ecosystem. This world is our ecosystem. It is our mother. It is like the womb of Mother Nature in which we exist. We can't exist without it. You look at astronauts, they go out into space and they literally atrophy. Their muscles get all weak and they start dying in a very short period of time unless they create everything that is here on this planet, the pressures, the temperatures, the blah, 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 blah. You go out into outer space, like really out there, away from all of the suns and everything. It's like minus 270 degrees Kelvin. It is cold. It is that cold. And we have no chance of existing there. But because of this protective environment, our planet, our whole living, life-sustaining system, we exist. And you've got to understand that it is who we are, what we are, where we come from, and we are expressions of this incredible total world, the environment, the water, the air, the nitrogen in the gas in the air, everything. We are expressions of that within it. So we're not just, our Western reasoning is, oh, that's a thing, it's a planet is a thing, and the sun is a thing, and everything is just this incredibly intense vibrating energy in space. I think of them as symphonies of energy flying through space in this incredible concerto or in this incredible symphony, and everything has to be in harmony, because if things are not in harmony with that flow, they become extinct, they die out, they're just gone, they're goners, bye. And that's what we're doing. We have become so out of harmony with that flow of nature and the energy and life. We've literally like fallen over so far that we've hit our head and we're bleeding to death. That's what we're doing. It's simple. It's like, if you want to keep on balancing and living, you need to keep on balancing. And that requires planetary ecosystems. What sustains ecosystems? Anyway, I'm getting too carried away with this, but I'm just going to say one more thing. If you look through the evolution of our planet on like a geological clock, at about, it's like 4.567 billion years all the way around the clock. And then at about 4.3 billion years ago, like basic life started to form, and like monocellular organisms and so on. And it was about 2.2 billion years ago that photosynthesis actually as a process started to happen within these life forms. And it took all of that time up until I think it was 1.2 billion years ago for the environment to become oxygenated enough for life to carry on, progressing to become the lives that we are and all other animal life. So this process of producing enough oxygen and then creating the balancing atmosphere of the correct amount of oxygen and the ozone being a certain amount of ozone and all of the balancing acts that were being, life was creating an environment in which life could survive and created all of these incredibly magical balances. So when I was a kid, oh my gosh, winters were the most idyllic, tropical, just paradise, just like the Bahamas. Like the weather in the Bahamas is almost like constantly one idyllic temperature. Like that's what it was where I come from, and of course that's in line with Fort Lauderdale, but on the other half of the planet, like in the southern hemisphere as opposed to the northern hemisphere. So I grew up literally in paradise. There was pristine nature all around me. There was this idyllic environment, beautiful, clean oceans, no pollution, no, it was just beautiful. And literally in my lifetime, it's turned in many places to a cesspool. And I just walk around outside. Yesterday, I was picking up garbage, and it was just layers and layers and layers of garbage, from bottle caps to broken glass to sweet papers and plastic. It was just disgusting. And I was just cleaning up around, like a little, one of the local girls here had a 14th birthday, and we were invited because my grandson needed to go. And it's horrendous how things have changed in such a short period of time. And of course, as the population is growing exponentially, everything is just getting out of hand exponentially. All of those balances which we depend on, those ecosystems, the ecosystems are complex things. And the more complex the relationships in an ecosystem, the stronger it is. The more you break away one, and then the other, and then the other, and then the other, and then eventually there's, we don't survive, we're extinct. And that's what we're doing. The sustainability is dependent upon the complexity of the relationships. And of course, even that within humans. Our relationships, we don't even have relationships with one another anymore. We don't have relationships with the animals and nature. Most people don't even go outside and see the trees blowing in the breeze and listen to the sound of the insects. They're not connected. They're totally disconnected. You really have to become more consciously connected to really appreciate where we live. Okay, sorry, John, I took your whole thing a little bit too far, but okay, we've got a little bit of extra time. So it's not just a rock, not just the third rock from the sun. It's much more than that. Fully understand the importance of a global view, the big picture. You need to know about it all and be able to answer these questions. Who are you? What are you? Where do you come from? And where are you going? And I think I just answered most of those questions indirectly. Why do you say we have one more generation left? If you have a look at all of the science and you realize that scientists are specialists, and they go out and they have a look at the ice pack, and they go and take cores and they, and they produce statistics and whatever. This is one guy. Then you have the ecologist, and he's doing his thing, and he's saying, we're in big trouble because, we're destroying all the rainforests. And then you go to the anthropologists, and you see how many different types of humans have become extinct throughout history. And then you look at all of the other animals that are becoming extinct because of our behavior. And then you go to the next guy, and next guy, next guy. And if you have this global view of all of these scientific inputs, and then you have the experience of traveling the oceans like I did throughout my life, and traveling the world, and all of my intimate connected awareness and everything to all of these different systems, it's beyond question, John. We actually have gone too far already. The only way we're going to get back is if we make a radical, like really extreme effort to regrow the jungles, to reclaim the deserts and the semi-deserts, and to try and capture more topsoil by putting in like literally gabions in the deserts and semi-desert regions to capture that water and to capture that sediment. Because second to overpopulation is the loss of topsoil. We will not have enough topsoil for life to have purchase, to grow roots and to hold on to, and to get us nutrients to grow, to feed us. It is the second most extreme thing that we're facing. So if you see the big picture and you fully comprehend it, it's like, oh my gosh, we are in so much shit. We don't know what's going to hit us. And it's very easy to be oblivious to it when one is within the bubble society of a protected society like America or Britain or whatever. And the media is so distracting and whatever. So let's go on to the next one. You have to be willing to see the big picture clearly. Deforestation, okay. And the increase in, and then the increase in consumption of all of the world's countries as they're expanding. Like that whole Miami region just before I left, The number of buildings going up is insane. Where's the wood coming from? Another thing that came up with the points from last week, that we were supposedly going to discuss this, the problems of the world and solutions, and truth and lies. Now, truth and lies is like the one that I'd really like to have a look at. I was working on my website just this last week, just to like try and get everything updated and everything. And I come to this like section on American wars. I had this video in the background playing of these guys just using these big, powerful machine guns and bombing buildings to smithereens with people in them, and just like insane war stuff. And all of a sudden, like I went in there and there was the video was gone. And I'm like, oh, that's weird. So then I go online to search for more videos of American war machine doing its disgusting thing overseas, and nothing. And I'm like, what the hell? They've done a cleanup job. And then all of the next things was, oh, Sudan is like a big problem, and these people are terrorists, and da da da. These are where the problems are around the world. A whole like cleanup and remarketing, reframing of the American military context in the world. It's like we're the good guys, you know, they're the terrorists, and we do all of the shit, but you can't know about it. All right. And but everyone else is doing shit. You really need to know about that, because they're the bad guys. And it's not just America, you know, it's like it's it's all of the corporate control governments around the world, whether it's Britain or the G8 or all of these different, like literally it's big money and big business who are out there doing some insane, crazy stuff around the world. All right. And if they're on our side, we don't get to hear about it. It's like that, and that's mind control. That's lying. That's cheating. It's like, if you're going to have fair and balanced reporting, then let us know about the shit that you're doing overseas as well, you know? Really? Then they hide the truth by omission, or focusing everyone's attention on the plastic bag. Oh, that plastic bag that tumbled across the desert last week was, and they get like, this is on all of the news channels, that plastic bag, you know, or whatever it was, some abstract like thing. Like Jimmy Jones said that somebody was playing games in the bathrooms of the, you know, the basketball league or something, you know, or whatever. And it just, the whole conversation becomes about this unimportant thing when real shit is going down somewhere in the world, and we should know about that. So distraction, omission, just not reporting shit, you know, it's like, really? And then American espionage, military incursions, economic manipulations, government manipulations, trade agreements, corporations, the rich, big business, causes of military conflict around the world. All of these things are driving dissent and this hatred and this terrorism and people not liking America and all that. But the manipulations and all the shit is going on, and people are suffering. People are suffering around the world. Their livelihoods, their everything they own and possess, and everything has been blown away or taken away, or they're being disempowered all around the world, just so these corporations can put in palm oil plantations, or, you know, banana plantations or sugarcane or whatever it is. And people are being driven off the land into smaller and smaller pieces of land, and then they're being called insane and stupid, like in Haiti. And because they chopped down all their trees. No, the trees were chopped down maybe by a corporation, or maybe they needed to burn a little bit, but it had all been plundered to sell to the American markets. And now that the corporations are pulled out and the people that are there are burning like the little remains that left, now they are the stupid people, and they are the cause of the soil erosion, and, you know, and so on and so on. It's like the insanity has no end. It's like in South Africa, we drove all these people into what you would call reservations. All right, we drove them into homelands, and then of course there were just too many people and too many cattle and too many whatever in such a small area of land that they devastated nature. And it's like, what do you expect? That many people cannot live on such a small piece of land. It's just not possible. Biased opinions and lies. All scientists agree in global warming is true and is happening, but media creates a 50-50 conversation about whether it is happening or not, creating this illusion of assent within scientific opinion. And it's not. It's people that are taking like really like out there concepts, all right, which are like really marginal concepts and ideas, and generalizing them to be like the rule. And then they have these back and forth, controlling the amount that the scientists can speak, because to explain something really requires that you have a big conversation. You're giving me the opportunity to talk to you today, and then you can understand what I'm saying. But give me a soundbite, and you're going to know nothing about what I'm saying. So, so there's soundbites. There's all sorts of ways in which you shut real science down, marginalize them, and then control the conversation. And the people who are making money in media are these liars, these dissenters who get paid big money to do what they do. And I wish I was a liar, because I would be coining it now. Anyway, um, um, and to me, like another one of the most incredible things is we're experiencing the most extreme robbery of resources around the world of all times right now. And the corporations and the wars and the civil wars and all of the things that they do to create these problems. It's like in South Africa, they used anti-apartheid, and then they put Mandela in power, and then they put in their trade agreements, and they literally overthrew the country. Um, with Venezuela, what they did is create a civil war between the right and the left. And of course, they then basically come in as the saviors and take over everything and monopolize that whole region. And so it's like this constant lies and chicanery to get whatever they want. So, um, and then of course, Fox News has this false news, distraction, deception, avoidance, outright lies, and so on. But then, like, even cleverer than that, when real news comes out, they say that's fake news. Like, people are like so confused, they don't know what the hell's going on, especially people who are uninformed, unenlightened, and they haven't like spoken to people like us. It's like they have no idea, and they keep on repeating the party line because the conversation has been created for them, and they don't have the knowledge and the background to be able to say, hey, you're talking rubbish, man. Anyway, so, and then I have friends sending me like pretty political propaganda about things like the ANC in our country is trying to create like a universal medical aid for everyone. Everyone has to pay 500 Rand taxes, and which is nothing. It's like $50. And it's actually less than that, it's about $35. And so everyone can have medical in the whole country. And then there is this private message sent out is like, they're taking away your freedom of choice to have your own medical aid and blah, 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 and lowering your expectations with medical and whatever. And they have this whole political thing promoted out there that the ANC is doing this wrong thing. But in actual fact, ultimately, we all need medical. And being on the outside myself, I end up in those hospitals. Anyway, so I think I've got more, but I've just got an itchy throat, and so it's your turn to talk, John.
Oh, wow. Okay. Do I get to talk as long? No,
Yeah, go well. We've got plenty of time.
No, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I guess I guess the best way to deal with this kind of format is maybe to respond to what you said. That way we kind of keep on the same. Okay. So I just jotted down a few things, about first, well, one of the first things that you did in the second segment, or was it the first? I can't remember. Was talk about, the justification of your statements. And I would just want to make clear, since with my background as a Toastmaster, the reason I said that about your last presentation about making categorical statements like this is the last generation. My issue with that was that you didn't back it up, like as an evaluation, as an evaluator would say, you didn't, not that I agree or disagree, but that you didn't back it up. You just made a categorical statement and didn't back up. This time you talked about some of those reasons that you believe or evidence to back that up. So that was good. I would have liked to have seen perhaps some charts, some bar graphs, things of that nature too, to back that up. But that's good. That was much better. But that was my objection, if you want to say.
No, I wasn't judging you in a negative way. It was just something that
No, I know that. I just wanted to make that clear. So, but to continue then along those lines, you also made you made a statement about politics, and we don't want to talk about politics. Now that's interesting. Every time I hear somebody say that, maybe it's a subconscious thing. They have a very strong political feeling, and they're trying to shut down. Now, I'm not saying, but I'm not doing a dialogue right now. I'm not doing a dialogue. Let me just speak. Okay. No interruptions, if you would. Because I'm not directing at just Dennis or just whatever Kurt last week or whatever, but just in a general way. I've noticed time and time again when people say I don't like politics, it's they don't want to hear any politics that they disagree with, or they don't want anybody else to hear any politics that they disagree with. So the moment somebody says something that doesn't agree with their politics, if that's politics, well, how is that any different from what you're saying? Was what you're saying not politics? Everything is basically politics. I can't remember the exact quote, but it reminded me of something that somebody once said or quoted somebody else as saying that, you might want not to have anything to do with politics, but politics is going to have something to do with you. Because after all, depending on how you define politics, well, politics is really not a negative or a positive. It's really, politics has to do with how the world is run, or how nations are run, or how policies are established. That's politics. So in a sense, we're all involved in politics. Even if we don't want to say we're involved in politics, at least we're affected by politics. So that was the other thing I was going to say. And there is a politics that is actually driving a lot of the environmental degradation. As to pick up on some of what I was saying last week, there is a politics that is actually driving mass immigration to sensitive parts of the world. What's his name? Kurt was very offended by that, but it is a fact that's the truth, and there is no question that is creating an impact on our resources, and our economic and on our natural resources. And it's not a question of, well, what difference does it make if people move from this place to that place? There are certain parts of the world that are naturally more consumer oriented, where the same person, say in sub-Saharan Africa, will not consume nearly as much, or produces nearly as much waste as transporting that person to a country, so-called first world country like America or a country in Europe. So there is a definite connection between the mass migration of peoples around the world and the acceleration of environmental degradation. It may not be politically correct with some people to say it, but it is true. And in fact, if you look at groups like Zero Population Growth and some of their literature from 50 years ago or more, they were quite explicit about that was something that they were against, and it was consistent with their environmental views, that they did not feel, or they were very much opposed to sort of the open borders politics that began to emerge in the 1960s, 1965 in particular, in this country with the passage of the 1965 Immigration Act that pretty much brought down all the borders, not all the borders, but brought down a lot of the restrictions that we had on immigration into this country, especially with the chain migration, the so-called family reunification part of that 1965 Act, which really just opened the floodgates, because we have the lottery system is for 1 million, but then you have to add on top of that the family reunification, which is unlimited. So you could have 2 million, or more in a given year, and then you have the illegal immigration on top of that, which is another million a year, and then with the politicians, because they believe that that's their benefit. In the short run, it is like so the open borders politicians get a benefit out of that because they're promising amnesty, and then once amnesty is passed, they promise citizenship and say, hey, we want to give you all these free things as immigrants. We want to give you all this free stuff. Hey, we gave you free stuff when you were illegal. We gave you the free healthcare. We gave you the free in California. Everything is free for the illegals. They can even vote technically only in the local elections, but we know what that means. So it's getting them in the habit of voting. So obviously, hey, we brought you in. We gave you everything. We need you to vote for us. So it becomes a vicious cycle of the more they bring in, it builds on itself because those politicians get elected based on that. And then what do they care about controlling the borders at that point? The more and more of these people they get, and it's not to the benefit of anybody, including, I believe, to these so-called migrants, the so-called refugees. They're fleeing countries rather than trying to fix those countries. They're all coming to one place, the U.S. or places that are already in better shape. But by doing so, they're eventually dragging down everywhere they go because they're not improving their own lives or improving the places where they already are. They're bringing their problems with them and expecting us to solve them. And you see in California, you see like the streets of San Francisco are just disgusting, just like piles and piles of human waste and discarded, drug needles, heroin needles and so forth. And the politicians are like, okay, here's your we're going to replace your needles for you and stuff. So it's a horrible system that really the third world is being transported into the first world, but in a way that is not actually reducing our consumption. So it's the worst of both worlds. That was what I was trying to explain. But there's people that have a political view, I guess a political not viewpoint, because it's not really a viewpoint. Okay. There's people that actually benefit from this system, or they're part of a party or part of a ideology that benefits from that system. So they get offended, or they just don't want to hear it. They know it's true on some level, but they don't want to hear it. Not because they disagree. I don't like that word disagree. I don't think, to a great extent, it's not that people disagree with things, it's that they don't want to allow the other side to express themselves, because then they begin to lose power. Not that they disagree. Like, I don't think that Kurd guy really disagreed with what I was saying. He just wanted to try to shut me down. There's a difference. And the fact that what I was saying was true was really the really offensive part about it. So anyway, as far as the other issue with global warming, I wasn't trying to say that things are not happening and that carbon dioxide isn't necessarily creating a greenhouse effect. I'm not a scientist, and I'm not going to try to get into that. What I was the only thing I was saying is that a lot of people aren't aware of some of the established science that already exists regarding what period in geological time we exist right now, and that is the quaternary. That's the word I couldn't remember last time. The quaternary ice age. We're actually in the quaternary ice age. That's not to That's not to contradict or try to undermine anything that's being said now. But we are in a quaternary ice age that started about 2.6 million years ago. And an ice age is any period in Earth's history where icebergs exist. And if you go to the North Pole, the South, the Antarctica, glaciers, I should say, because icebergs are just the tip of the glacier. So where glaciers, I should say, exist, glaciers and icebergs exist, and they exist in this world today. More than 2.6 million years ago, we were not in an ice age, and the world was much hotter than it is today, and there was no standing ice anywhere in the world at all, any time of the year. Winter, not in the winter, not any time. not winter in the northern hemisphere and not winter in the southern hemisphere, which is our summer. Never did we have any standing like just glaciers that didn't exist. We're in an ice age now only because of that. That's the definition, the scientific definition of our ice age, which is the Quaternary period. Within that Quaternary period, which started 2.6 million years ago, there's interglacial periods, as I was explaining before, and they last between 10 and 15,000 years each. It's like temperatures dip for 15,000 years, 10 to 15,000 years, then they rise for 10 to 15,000 years, then up and down and up and down and up. That's why the last, quote unquote, the last ice age, which is not really an ice age, but the last interglacial period we had was approximately 11 or 12,000 years ago. We talked about the caveman era and that era. That was about 11,000 years ago. That was actually an interglacial period. We use the informal term ice age, but it wasn't really an ice age because we are in an ice age now. It was the interglacial period. I'm sorry, not interglacial period. One of the glaciation periods. We're in an interglacial now, which means between glaciation periods, great glaciation periods. We're in a lower glaciation, which is interglacial. But the last major glaciation within our 2.6 million years of ice age that have already in progress was approximately 11 to 12,000 years ago. I think, Dennis, maybe you may have studied that too. And so we are actually a little bit overdue to begin the dip in temperatures. So that the carbon is the increase of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere might be an explanation for that. Why we haven't begun to taper off a little bit. In fact, we're still apparently going up a little bit. Some people blame ice spots, but whatever. Let's just say that what the scientists are saying, what the majority of scientists are saying now is correct, and that is the carbon dioxide. Just as a premise, we're going to throw that out there. That it's the carbon dioxide that's being pumped into the atmosphere at greater levels because of automobiles, because of our technology, that is creating this greenhouse effect that's trapping the gas, that's trapping the ultraviolet waves, ultraviolet radiation, and warming up the planet. Then, well, that would then account for the fact that we haven't begun that dip into the next major glaciation. So some would argue, well, then that's a good thing, because if we went to the major, and if we went into a deep freeze again, that would probably cause great upheaval in the world and so forth. And maybe like in that movie, I forget, it came out like 10 years ago, where there was another sudden ice age, and you had reverse migration from the US into Mexico, people just flooding the borders of Mexico because it was getting too cold in the northern hemisphere, and people were trying to flood to the south. So whatever that may be, maybe we're overdue, because maybe it should come. Maybe we need that. Maybe we need to cool off a little bit. So I'm not saying that I'm in favor of more carbon dioxide being pumped into the atmosphere. I was just sort of like trying to get across the geological point that but the geological fact that we are technically in an ice age right now. And the other thing was about immigration, but I think I explained that now. So I guess it's Diane's turn.
Okay. That was really good. And I appreciate, John, your in-depth knowledge and explanation, because I honestly did not know all of that.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
And and Dennis, you do a great job too of bringing in more in-depth details that help, put the picture together. So
cool.
I enjoy the conversations, and I didn't mean to take anything away from you, John. Were you done? Okay. So I guess in listening to all this, my brain constantly goes, well, how do we solve it? And so for me, in trying to create like the Earthian stewardship, I want to create this website that has a massive amount of information. It's almost like taking a Wikipedia, a TED Talk, like Gaia, which does all the different things related to yoga and stuff. and create a website that's about the climate, the earth, the planet, kind of like how man changed the planet, where we are now, and what are some things we can do that make a difference. And I see a lot of people doing a lot of things to make a difference. And there's a lot of people messing it up. So, I don't have the answer. I think that's something that we evolve with. And one of the things, what Dennis, you had said, the extreme robbery of resources that is happening. And a friend of mine had a thought of a new way, which would take a little while to implement, and not people wouldn't like it, because right now, really, the world is controlled by he who has the most money, which is usually oil and gas, the politicians. I really think those are the two main big players. And so taking natural resources and making that a taxable item. So if somebody wants to take a natural resource from the planet and they're using that in their business model, maybe the first year they don't see a change, but they know the next year that if they use that same natural resource, it's going to cost them more. And then the next year it's going to cost them more. So they know that as a business, they have to have a plan where they look out 5 years and say, I've got to do something serious to change the way I'm doing my business to keep the money I want to have, you know. Um, and then on the flip side, if you use a recycled item, there's zero tax. So now it's like it's remotivating big businesses to find ways to incorporate a new way of thinking. And I think it has to happen. It's I don't know how to make it happen, but that's kind of a way to instill into these big corporations, a change of mindset that we're trying to get. Oh, Bill Gates came out with his new movie. It's on Netflix now, Inside Bill's Brain. And he's got some wonderful ideas. And I love the way he approaches things, and he brings everybody in to be part of a solution. And I think that we have to have that level of thinking to be able to do this. And I, of course, want to do that in a website. And I'm dumbfounded if anybody has any suggestions as to how to put that website together. Um, so I have to do a little more homework. And so, science kind of creates these theses about something being a certain way, and then everybody acts as if it's true. And there's a lot of times when science brings things up and it's not true. Like when they thought the world was flat, people died because of their thought. So there's a lot of work to do, and there's a lot of conversations to be had. And so, I mean, I don't have a very long conversation at the moment, and I'm evolving. So I appreciate us all talking together and getting the opportunity to expand our minds. And I think it's going to happen. I just don't know how. And that's all I have to say.
All right, that was
So thank
wonderful. I mean, you got some great ideas there. There's many, many different things that I can actually help you with. Um, and in terms of sort of like the perspective, I think really you need to know what went wrong in ancient times, what is
I have
going
to
on
put that
now.
into okay, I don't mean to interrupt you, but
Yeah.
when you say that, I have to be able to put that into a presentation that I can show.
Okay, cool, cool. So, I mean, I can actually sort of give you a pretty clear sort of thing of what to do. It's like really what happened from humans in ancient times and when they moved onto different continents, and why did the megafauna die when ever humans went into those regions? And it was simple things like they would use slash and burn as techniques for agriculture and for herding animals into like an enclosure or whatever, and then culling them and being able, and of course the easiest animals to kill were the slower moving animals. And of course the gestation period, which is the time from falling pregnant to actually having a new living being that survives, is with bigger animals takes longer. With rats, it's very quick, so they have a greater chance of survival than the megafauna, meaning the big animals. And basically our megafauna, like the elephants and the rhinos, the black rhino is extinct now, and all of them have absolutely no chance of survival. They are like done and done because of their the rate of culling and their gestation period. It's like it's going to happen. So slashing and burning destroyed many different species of life, and then monoculture um, farming also displaced many species of life, and that has been like one of the foundational ways of being that literally killed life at like many different species of life. The marsupials in Australia, um, all of the biodiversity that used to be across Australia is all just culled back through simple, stupid mistakes. You don't just burn shit because you can, just to put in crops, you know. And they do it every day in Africa, you know. It's like they want new fresh grass for their cattle to make them nice and fat, so they burn a whole area of grass. The sugarcane farmers burn all of the chaff off their crops so that they can get a better sucrose content, and they don't have to labor so hard to chop all the sugarcane down. It's like all of these like really stupid things are happening even today. It's like if you just let that stuff fall on the ground, you chop it off and put it on the ground or whatever, it becomes fertilizer for the soil, which ensures that your crops going on after that are much better and they are more nutritious and blah, 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 blah. But it's like maximum yields, maximum profits for this immediate circumstance. And of course, that's very destructive. So okay, so
All
those are
right.
two of those concepts, and then of course, all of the practices of monoculture agriculture led to growth of securing the things. So with that resulted in kings and queens and technology result, and then of course to control the hearts and minds of people, the witch doctors became the religions, which became so you had these growth of power bases, like three main points of the power bases, which became the religions and became the kingdoms and so on, right throughout history. And then, of course, you have a whole lot of like development of absolutist pyramid schemes, which is like the Torah with Moses, where he learned all about pyramids, like in ancient from the pharaohs, because he was raised by them as their son, you know. And of course, then he applied those principles, and then those principles spread through Rome and right across the world into many different religions, which are all pyramid schemes, which are all about plundering nature to get the maximum yields and profits for the biggest return to make the rich richer. So it's like it's just this pyramid scheme, and it's been applied in many different ways by different people throughout history. And we live in a limited planet with pyramid schemes wherever you look, and we're reaching the ends of our limits. You can't just keep taking. I mean, there's a point at which you know you have no more to take, and of course we're running up against that wall. And the only way to prevent that ultimate extinction, because that's where we're heading, is to start regenerating life across the planet. Um, and so now, how do we do that? And that's the basis of all existence in the universe is this coming together in relationships and the flowing of energy in love, balance, and harmony to result in a more abundant, more life-filled environment. And so my idea of creating these teaching eco-villages is to teach this natural wisdom to people and let them reintegrate with life, recreate all those relationships, all of those ecosystems, and redevelop, grow life into the future. It's such a simple principle, but really that's what we have to do. If we don't grow that which feeds us and sustains our environment and our air and whatever, if we don't do that, we're
I
done.
agree.
And it's so simple. So that's all we really have to do. But there are many techniques of doing it. There are things that we can do on a political level, like John would like to see. We can get everyone out of the swamplands. We can start to protect coral reefs. We can politically deal with global warming, and we can do a whole lot of political things at that level. But the reluctance of institutions to change, that's the problem. So if we can get people across the world talking about this and saying, hey,
Mm-hmm.
we're not going to we're not going to stand for your reluctance to change. We want change and we want it now. All right. And this is what we want. Then all of a sudden, the whole political arena changes. It's not just like a he said, you said, you know, us against them, divide and rule, divide and it's none of that anymore. It's like we're all in this boat and we all need to work together. Now, whether you're in a third world country or a 10th world country or whatever, we all have to regrow our world. And the way we do it is by planting the seeds in the minds of people of thought, teaching them how to think, teaching them how to behave, teach them all
Mm-hmm.
about these sustainable ways of living. And then we naturally, as a natural process, we transform our world. So political, yes, but and technological things are not the solution. That was the other thing that, yes, in the short term, what Bill Gates is saying, great. But you put in that technology into a third world country and they have no money to maintain it. All right? It lasts for as long as it lasts.
You have to watch it. You can't
And
judge what Bill Gates says until you watch it.
no, I watched it. I watched it. So, like, just for an example, just to give you an idea, we had a sustainable eco village when I was a kid, and we had a borehole with a windmill. And before long, the windmill stopped turning because it just had no grease and stopped turning. The bearings wore out, and that was it. Boom. End of borehole. Technology done. And I've been on yachts a whole life, repairing technology as a marine engineer and on big ships, constantly plowing money and money and money to sustain technology so the ship can keep on moving. All right. And keep on producing water and keep on flushing toilets and constant labor and whatever. There are methods that are so much better, like human manure toilets and literally chopping up your garbage as you throw it in, the leaves, and it turns into compost, like in the bottom of the garbage bin. And then you're reintroducing that into the soil and so on. And before you know it, you have like these incredibly healthy plants. Just an example. When I was when we lived in Westville, which is like in Durban, South Africa, it's just outside of Durban, a septic tank, all right, which is basically it's rocks under you dig a big hole, you put rocks under the ground, and basically the plumbing from the toilet just goes into this big like hole where there's lots of rocks and stones and soil on the top. We had papaya pawpaws growing on that above that septic tank, the most delicious, succulent, sweet, incredible papayas you've ever tasted in your life. Delicious.
Yum.
There you go. And it was getting the nutrients that it needed to be really healthy. So um, we are, even our pooping and our peeing is essential to sustain life. So being spread out on the land is critically important. And pooping on the land, not in toilets. No, that's a waste. That's a waste. We, as canoeists going downstream, the indigenous people used to say, okay, that's your area of land, you all poop there, because they were going to use that for their next crop for the next season. Brilliant, you know? So, yeah, just ideas. So, any feedback from that, John?
Yeah, it sounds great, except that the problem with that on a grand scale in areas where you're very densely populated, you won't want people just pooping, anywhere in Fort Lauderdale, for example, because that might
But
just run
but
off into the ocean. But yeah,
that's what you've pointed it out. I mean,
yeah,
centralization and decentralization, critically
hmm
important. Walls,
yeah,
borders, fences, gone.
mhm,
All one humanity, one world, all making sure that everyone has enough, no migration, nobody wants to go somewhere else. Everyone is living sustainably. Those are the keys.
Well, it can't happen overnight, and in the meantime, you need those walls and you need those borders. Otherwise, we have a situation like you have in San Francisco, and I don't think anybody wants to live in that kind of environment. Certainly not the
I,
politicians. Don't they live behind their gate, their golden gates, and they're wonderful in their mansions while they pass all these laws that benefit them at the polls, but certainly don't benefit the vast majority of people who who are suffering because
but
of it. But yeah, the other thing is, I think one of the things is our generation has become, this generation, or maybe not just this generation, maybe the last 100 years
mhm.
of humanity has become very arrogant in thinking that we have cast aside a lot of the stuff from the past because it has no value, and we really abandoned a lot of age-old wisdom. I like to read old books, and it's amazing how many things that were just taken for granted as just wise have been completely discarded today, to the point they're now considered even bigoted, whatever. uh, there's a lot of stuff that that's just completely been abandoned, and maybe the reason that the last generation or so there's been so much degradation is because we've abandoned so much wisdom that we used to know, and now not only do have, well, we not necessarily forgotten it, but now we say we have, it has been labeled as either old fashioned or just plain bigoted or stupid, and we are the wisest generation, but we're not. This is not the wisest generation. I mean, if you agree with everything Dennis has said about the degradation that's taking place, and it certainly has, how can you say that this is the wisest generation? Perhaps
No.
we're the most technologically advanced. I know, that's what I'm saying. Perhaps we're the most technologically advanced generation, but who has created that technology? It's not the vast majority of people. The vast majority of people had absolutely nothing to do with it. They're just consumers. They're just using it. Their wisdom didn't contribute to anything at all. They're extremely ignorant. In fact, the vast majority of people are extremely ignorant. There's a small, very small percentage of the people that are actually producing, the great technological advancements and stuff. But is the population at large ready for all this stuff? I mean, people everywhere you go, they're staring at their phones, and they're and in the libraries, we have a lot of libraries in South Florida and probably in other states and other places, but this is where I live. So if you go into a library, they're full. People on the computer, most advanced technology. What are they doing on these incredibly advanced machines in these libraries that we're spending a lot of taxpayer money on? They're on YouTube watching videos. They're playing games.
It's
They're
insane.
sometimes they're looking at sometimes at porn or whatever, big boobs, whatever the hell it is. There's nothing intelligent going on in these areas where we have high technology. People are using the high technology for garbage. They're not smart just because they're on a computer. It doesn't make you smart. It's super easy. Everything is so user friendly now. You don't have to have any IQ points to use a phone or a computer or go online or anything like that. So we're not wiser. I would say that we're less wise. Our generation is probably the least wise and the most corrupt of all the generations. So maybe there is some wisdom that we can learn from. I know, Dennis, you don't like the Bible and stuff like that, but if you look at the New Testament, a lot of the Old Testament stuff is cast aside, and there's a lot of wisdom that you can glean from that, including a rejection of some of the ideas that continue to be clung to by, I guess, the Orthodox Jews. Continue to cling to some of that stuff. And I don't want to talk about Israel right now because it's probably getting late, but the
Yeah.
Zionism and all that stuff. But anyway, I don't want to get into that right now.
No. You can prepare your speech for that and everything, and like really do like a full proper presentation on that. But basically, that is my thing. Is I've been on this journey to discover like natural wisdom, not just superficial. Oh, that whatever. But what actually happened in the big picture, get like a perspective of everything, and all of these different ways of thinking, and where we are and everything. It's so important. There's this critical natural wisdom, like everything's composed of motion, cause and effect. What came before results in what's in the future. Um, Basically, we live in this literally vibrating, spiraling, spinning flow of energy that we are expressions of. We're like part of the symphony, like we are the flute or whatever within this great symphony of musical instruments playing this life, this song, this flow of existence. And if we don't play along with the symphony, we become discordant, and of course we like get kicked out of the orchestra. It's like, well, you're done. Bye. Uh, yeah. So um, the thing is there were a few things that I was looking at. Oh yes, you just what you just said is you don't think this is the wisest generation, and in actual fact, I call this the age of ignorance. It's like way back in history, we looked at dinosaurs like at the flat Earth society and the belief that we lived on a flat world and you'd fall off the edge and whatever, and um, that was like an age of ignorance and dominated by religions, believe it or not. And then there was another age up to Galileo where we were egocentric and we believed that, everything in the universe spun around Earth because we were the center of the universe. And of course, when that was broken down, we were like, oh my gosh, how could people be so stupid? And right now we have an age dominated by institutions with money and power and religions. And we're basically still in a stupid, dumbass age of ignorance. We have not grown up and become mature adults of our time. We're not thinking, we're not seeing, we're not realizing, like, what is the fundamental um, reason for our existence? It's our relationships, it's our love, it's our relationships, our connectivity, our giving and receiving of energy, which are like fundamental principles for existence. And it's like people don't see it. It's like I look out of my window and I see a tree, and I'm like, am I actually seeing that tree like hitting me on the eyeball and saying, I'm a tree? Like, no. What I'm seeing is the energy that came and entered the tree, the leaves, and now is radiating out like electromagnetic waves, like ripples on this ocean. Yeah. All right, radiating outwards. And those ripples of electromagnetic energy are hitting my eyeball, my retina, and I'm perceiving that pattern. And I'm saying, ocean or cloud, tree. And I'm saying a pattern of energy. It's like everything is like this flowing energy. And of course, if the tree had eyes to see, it would see me. But it's experiencing me with the energy that I'm radiating out, the noise, the vibrations. There is this constant ebb and flow of energy right throughout the universe happening all of the time. So these belief in things like Big Bang Theory, everything began once in one place and it's been expanding outwards only for, you know, um, 14 billion years or whatever. It's like nonsense. Energy is flowing in all directions all the time, and it's being captured and received by planets and stars, and we exist because of this continuous ebb and flow of energy. And we come into being and then we literally fade out of being or become part of something bigger and eventually explodes and radiates outwards. There is, like in supernovas and so on, there is this continuous life cycle happening. So everything is cycles upon cycles upon cycles. It is beautiful. It is absolutely incredible. But people don't see it because they're so disconnected from the true nature of who we are. They really, they can't see it. So yeah, there is so much incredible wisdom out there, John, that if we all knew it and we all understood it, nobody could lie to us anymore. We'd be like, yeah, no, that's bullshit. I liked your thing about everything is politics. Well, if you think of the idea that we're all talking to one another and we're all sharing ideas and we're all trying to influence one another, in that sense, absolutely, it's politics. But what I'm really referring to when I'm saying it's all politics is this whole thing of Republican versus Democrat, and we're having this within the argument of we're in a government, in a country, we have walls, borders, and fences, we've set the paradigm, this is our pyramid scheme, and now we're going to have a go at one another. And there's this divide and rule thing, you've been turned against one another all the time. There's no way you're going to ever solve those problems, because you're in the box trying to solve the fact that you're in the box, or solve problems within the box. It's like you're in the box. There's nothing you can do. You're stuck, you know? And it's the same with religion. We can go into religion and discuss all sorts of things right now, and many different religions, because I've studied many, many of them. And we can start getting into an argument, and you'll say, oh, Jesus is good, and I'll say, oh, but the religion's bad because Moses is bad. And we get into this whole thing, and we solve nothing. Hours later, we will still be fighting, because you cannot solve the problem within the paradigm you're in. You have to step out of it. Thank you so much, everyone. The two of you, that was...
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dennis, again, and better luck next time with the technology. And
all right, take it easy.
All right.
All right, guys. We'll see you next week.
See ya.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Well, hey, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.